May 24, 1945, Berlin, Germany. The city is still smoking, its ruins glowing faintly in the midnight haze. The air smells of ash, diesel, and wet brick. Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov stands in the shell of the Reich Chancellery courtyard, his greatcoat catching flakes of soot as they drift through the searchlight beams. Around him, victory feels hollow, too quiet, too exhausted to celebrate. His adjutants linger nearby, their medals glinting weakly in the fading firelight. On a splintered table rests a strange trophy of war, a green glass bottle still cold, its label tattered but legible, Coca-Cola. Zhukov stares at it with an expression no one can quite read. The drink had been introduced to him weeks earlier by his American counterparts during the joint occupation meetings. At first, he dismissed it as a sugary novelty. But after one sip, something changed. The fizz, the bite, the peculiar caramel sweetness. It was like liquid energy. He'd laughed it off at first, calling it the drink of capitalists. But in private, away from Stalin's gaze, Zhukov couldn't deny it. He liked the taste. More than that, he wanted it again. Now as the victorious Red Army stands poised to claim Berlin, Zhukov allows himself a rare indulgence. He uncaps the bottle. The hiss of carbonation cuts through the night. He drinks deeply, eyes closed, as the bubbles crackle against the silence of conquered Germany. But the sound of boots crunching glass snaps him from the moment. One of his aides, a young lieutenant, has entered the courtyard. "Comrade Marshal, a message from Moscow. The General Secretary requests your report on the occupation zones." Zhukov sets the bottle down quickly, almost guiltily. "Of course," he says. "Tell them I'll send it by dawn." As the officer salutes and retreats, Zhukov glances back at the half-empty Coca-Cola. He knows Stalin would never approve of such a symbol of Western decadence, especially in the hands of the Soviet Union's greatest hero. One photograph, one careless remark, and the whisper of American sympathies could destroy him. He looks toward the east, the direction of Moscow, and mutters under his breath, "You can conquer half the world but not your own taste." That night, under the dim light of a captured German lamp, Zhukov pens his official report for the Kremlin. But before sealing it, he scribbles another note, one meant for an American friend across the newly drawn borders of post-war Europe. A quiet favor, a discreet request. He asks for more Coca-Cola.
Summer 1946, Vienna, Austria. The city lies under joint occupation, divided among the Allies like a fragile glass. In the American sector, a black sedan rolls past checkpoints manned by U.S. military police. Inside sits General Mark W. Clark, commander of U.S. forces in Austria, a man whose handshake could determine the fate of trade routes, prisoners, and, in this case, beverages. Across from him, an aide reads a confidential note written in neat Russian-tinged English. The message carries Zhukov's personal seal. Its request is peculiar. "I require the American drink known as Coca-Cola, but in a form that will not offend Soviet sensibilities." Clark chuckles under his breath. "The Red Marshal wants Coke," he says, "but it has to look like vodka." He shakes his head. "Well, I'll be damned." But he doesn't dismiss it. Zhukov is no ordinary Soviet. His armies crushed the Wehrmacht at Stalingrad, stormed Berlin, and forced Hitler's surrender. Even among Americans, the man is a legend, a commander respected, if not trusted. If a favor like this could help maintain the fragile post-war peace, so be it. Clark reaches for the secure phone in the back seat. "Get me Coca-Cola headquarters," he orders. 2 weeks later, a quiet meeting unfolds at Coca-Cola's European bottling office in Brussels. The executives listen as a U.S. Army officer relays the strange diplomatic request. One of them, a chemist named M.G. Walker, raises an eyebrow. "You mean the Soviets want Coca-Cola without it looking like Coca-Cola?" "Exactly," the officer replies. "No caramel color, no branding, just the flavor. And it has to resemble clear Russian vodka. The Marshal doesn't want to be seen drinking anything decadent." The room goes silent for a moment. Then the head of European operations, James Farley, slaps the table. "Gentlemen, this is Coca-Cola we're talking about. We built a plant on Omaha Beach after D-Day. If a Soviet general wants our drink disguised as vodka, we'll make it happen." The next months turn into a covert collaboration between the U.S. Army Logistics Corps and Coca-Cola's chemists. They work in near secrecy, stripping the drink of its signature caramel tint while preserving its taste and fizz. But the real genius lies in the presentation. The bottle must pass for Soviet spirits, simple, utilitarian, un-American. Walker oversees the prototype, a clear glass bottle with a plain red star stamped on the cap. No logo, no cursive script, only a faint mark at the base. property of the U.S. Army PX. The project received an unofficial code name whispered among a few insiders: White Coke. When the first crate is loaded into an American military aircraft bound for Vienna, no press release is issued. The pilots think they're carrying medical supplies. As the plane lifts off, the glass bottles clink softly in their wooden crate, a secret toast to diplomacy, sugar, and subterfuge. Across the Iron Curtain in his Moscow office, Zhukov waits. On his desk, the ashtray is full. The map of Europe glows red under a desk lamp. He has no idea that soon a shipment will arrive that no Soviet citizen will ever see. Coca-Cola made just for him.
Autumn 1946, Moscow, Soviet Union. A low gray fog blankets the city as a military convoy rumbles through the gates of Zhukov's dacha on the outskirts of town. The guards, wearing thick wool coats and PPSH-41 submachine guns slung over their shoulders, wave the trucks through after inspecting the U.S. Army cargo manifest. Medical supplies, it claims. Inside one of the crates, packed carefully in straw and ice, are 24 bottles of colorless Coca-Cola. Each bottle catches the dim morning light like liquid glass. The red star on the cap is the only hint of color, a subtle symbol of the Soviet Union, masking an American secret. Marshal Zhukov stands by the window when his aide approaches. "Comrade Marshal," the man says, "the special delivery from Vienna has arrived." Zhukov turns slowly, hiding the flicker of anticipation in his eyes. "Bring it in," he orders. The crate is opened before him. He lifts one bottle, examining it closely. It looks perfect, plain, clear, unassuming. A peasant could mistake it for vodka. He removes the cap with a faint psst and takes a sip. The familiar fizz, the exact sweetness, it's unmistakable. Coca-Cola. He exhales softly. "Brilliant," he mutters. "Absolutely brilliant." His aide hesitates. "Comrade Marshal, this is American, yes?" Zhukov's gaze hardens. It is a beverage. That's all anyone needs to know. He places the bottle down carefully, the red star catching the light. "To the men who made this possible, wherever they are, tell them they have my gratitude." But word travels fast in Moscow's corridors of power, even when whispered. A few weeks later, an NKVD colonel notices unusual shipments arriving under diplomatic seal. The documents are perfectly forged, but the colonel's instincts are sharp. He makes a note in his report: possible foreign luxury items received by Marshal Zhukov. Stalin reads that report. In the Kremlin, Joseph Stalin sits beneath a dim chandelier, pipe smoke curling around his head like a storm cloud. "Coca-Cola," he repeats, his Georgian accent curling the word with disdain. "An American drink. Zhukov drinks this?" Beria, head of the NKVD, leans forward. "That is what the report suggests, Comrade General Secretary, though the bottles appear transparent, perhaps a new type of vodka." Stalin grunts, setting his pipe down. "There are no new vodkas. There are only old traders." He pauses. "Still, Zhukov has done much for the motherland. Let us not act hastily." Behind his calm tone lurks suspicion. Stalin never trusted anyone with too much glory, and Zhukov's fame was already dangerous. Back at the dacha, Zhukov remains blissfully unaware that every bottle he drinks now carries a shadow. What was once a simple pleasure has become a risk. Still, he can't resist. On cold evenings, when reports from Berlin grow heavy with politics and betrayal, he pours a glass of the clear, fizzy drink, watching the bubbles rise like ghosts of a world beyond ideology. It tastes like freedom, sweet, forbidden, and fleeting. Winter 1947. A biting wind sweeps through Vienna's American sector, rattling the windows of the U.S. Command Office. Inside, Colonel Jack W. Tompkins of Army Logistics warms his hands by a coal stove, flipping through a stack of classified memos. One bears a red stamp: Soviet delivery, special authorization. He chuckles to himself. "Never thought I'd see the day when we're smuggling soda into the USSR," he says, tapping ash from his cigarette into an empty mug. His adjutant grins. "It's not soda, sir, it's diplomacy." Tompkins nods. "Yeah, fizzy diplomacy." The quiet joke masks the truth. Coca-Cola has become an unofficial symbol of American culture, a weapon of image as much as flavor. Soldiers drink it on every front. Presidents toast with it, And now, one of the Soviet Union's most powerful men secretly craves it. In a world already split between East and West, the drink has crossed a border no tank could. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Zhukov's reputation is beginning to sour. Stalin's paranoia has sharpened since the victory parades. The Marshal's fame, his Western connections, and now these whispers of foreign indulgence make him a target. At a late-night meeting in the Kremlin, Stalin's voice cuts through the silence like a knife. Zhukov thinks he can drink American drinks and play the hero, remind him that the revolution has no taste for sweetness. By spring, Zhukov is reassigned, moved from his high command to a less influential post in Odessa. Officially, it's routine. Unofficially, it's exile. When he departs Moscow, the last crate of white Coke sits unopened in his cellar. He tells no one. Years later, in 1953, after Stalin's death, Zhukov's name returns to honor. He commands again, this time under Khrushchev, who views him as both a war hero and a symbol of continuity. In those more relaxed years, Coca-Cola is no longer a forbidden whisper. Western visitors bring gifts, watches, chocolate, and occasionally bottles of the drink that once had to be smuggled in under red stars. One evening, during a quiet dinner at his home, an American diplomat presents Zhukov with a familiar green bottle. "Marshal," he said, smiling, "I thought you might prefer the original flavor." Zhukov studies it for a long moment. Then, with a faint smile, he accepts. He opens the cap with a soft hiss, just as he did that night in Berlin 8 years earlier. He raises the bottle. "To peace," he says. The diplomat nods. "To peace and good taste." They both laugh. The secret of White Coke remains buried in archives and anecdotes for decades. Few outside a handful of American officers and Coca-Cola executives ever know this story. For the Soviet people, it's just a rumor, one of many myths about their elusive generals. But for those who served under Zhukov, there were whispers that the Marshal once had his own private vodka, clear as ice, sweet as victory, and made by the Americans themselves. And every time someone opened a bottle and heard that soft, familiar psst, it carried an echo of the strangest Cold War alliance ever forged, one not by treaties or guns, but by bubbles and sugar.